Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elevating Your Life. Today, we are going to talk about just something, really, emotional and a part of our lives and, something in our world and that affects a lot of people. We have with us today a fantastic guest. We have Leigh Lincoln. She has spent the better part of the last 30 years involved in homeless and poverty advocacy in one way or another. Her novel, Road Home, was born out of this work. She wanted to make people think about their lives and how they live, but most importantly, about how they treat others and how they want to be treated. Her other novels, Road to Freedom, Finding the Real Road, and The Road West, look at how our lives don't always follow the path we choose, but yet somehow we must pick up the broken pieces and move on. How we grow and where our strength comes from is what's most important. And Leigh is interviewed on multiple radio shows, podcasts. She is just making such a difference in the world. First off, welcome, Leigh. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So happy to have you here. Well, let's start out with a bit more your background. What brought you into this? And actually, I've heard that it was kind of an accident, you writing your first book. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So for a lot of years, I did, as you said, homeless and poverty advocacy. I worked at homeless shelters, soup kitchens. I was on all these committees, from first time home buyer committees, community development committees, neighborhood associations, all of these things, right? I was involved in everything, trying to help everyone out, right? And there was one evening I went to this community meeting, and the topic was really interesting to me, and I had something I wanted to say. But the person who was leading this meeting just ignored me. He pointed to the politician, he pointed to the businessman, he pointed to the person that had clout in the community, right? He was pointing to everyone but me. So at the end of the meeting, I went up to him to try to tell him what I wanted to say, but he just shut me down. And he gave me all these excuses why he didn't want to hear what I had to say. I was just a woman. I was just a single mom. I was just a volunteer. I didn't have the right background, right education, right. It just went on and on. It would have taken him less time to hear what I had to say than it took for me to hear his excuses, right? So I went home after that meeting just angry and frustrated and just like, what? And I realized he wasn't the only one in all of these years that had been ignoring me and my opinion. While people were happy to have me work, they were not happy to hear what I had to say. And I realized I was forgettable. I was unimportant. I was weak. I was powerless. I was invisible. I really was a nobody. And that was wrong on so many levels. So I just took pen to paper and I just started pouring my heart out with all of these frustrations and everything I'd done over all these years. And after several months of night after night after night of doing this, I looked at what I'd written and I realized that at some point it had flipped from writing about myself to writing the first person perspective of a homeless woman and all of her journeys and all of her trials and tribulations. And while I understand why I did it, I don't understand quite how I did it. And I accidentally wrote this novel.
Wow.
And so, yep. So Road Home was never intentional. On my part, it was totally my subconscious trying to make not only myself more visible, but the population that I've been working with for so long more visible.
Yes. So you had been working with homeless communities for so long and helping them. So you had a sense of what they were going through and where their hearts were. And, you were able to share that in this book, weren't you?
Yeah, and that's ultimately why I decided to try to do something with it. And so I took it to a local writers group and cleaned it up a little bit, and then had an editor clean it up a little bit more. But when you hand an editor a total hot mess, there's only so much she could do with it. Um, Again, I have no training as an author, so I am the first to acknowledge it's very raw, it's very emotional. And I get a lot of people who read it who are like, how long were you homeless? And I'm like, I never was. I just worked with them for so long. I understand
Mhm.
everything that they're going through. So yes, it just pulls you in and makes you understand her world, and in such a way that a lot of people are like, wow, I never thought about it, like that. And when I first published it, I was still in that mode of, yeah, nobody's gonna pay any attention to me, right? I'll sell till 10 copies, make a couple of bucks, and throw it at these charities I've been working with, right? And clearly that isn't what happened, right?
Yes, yes. And you've written several books. So give us a little tidbit about those other books as well.
So after Road Home, it was fairly successful, needless to say. Yeah. And people just kept yelling at me that I needed to write more because they loved the honesty and the reality that is that first book. So several years later, I was like, okay, let's see if I can actually write a book when I try to write a book. So I wrote Road to Freedom, and it is about a man who's dying of cancer, and he's an immigrant and has had this beautiful life in other countries. And so he convinces this woman to marry him because he doesn't want to die alone. And then he takes her to Cuba and Spain. And so you have this tragic love story, I think, along the lines of Nicholas Spark books, right? As he tries to unravel everything he's done in those last few months of his life with his new bride.
Wow. Wow. Ah, it, you know, all the work you've done, let's talk a little bit about what that's like working with the homeless and what you've seen to maybe give a more of an understanding for those of us that may not know a lot about the world a homeless person lives in. And for example, you know, when we see someone, on the side of the road, what maybe can we do to help? Or tell us about that a little bit.
Well, my big thing is I always have what I call kits in my car. They're just little gallon-sized Ziploc baggies that have a few little snacks in them, a bottle of water, and a package of wet wipes, those little ones that have 5 to 10 packs in them. Um, just something simple, and a card from the local homeless shelter. Um, just just so someone knows that they're cared about, that they're loved. Something really simple. I don't personally give money. I know this is a controversial issue, but me personally, um, given what I've seen over the years, I don't feel that's appropriate for a lot of reasons. And so I feel this is a better way to go. And I always try to talk to people. I will have a conversation with anyone, though. I'm one of those people. So if I do see someone I suspect is homeless, I will sit down and I will have a conversation with them. And I will give them this bag of treats, granola bar, a few snack items that's in there, some crackers, whatever is in the treat bag that I have in my car. And I try to talk to them and figure out where they're at and what they're doing. I do not encourage most people to do that, though. Talk to homeless people by themselves. That's usually not a safe thing to do. However, I've been doing this long enough. I know some cautionary signs, so I'm comfortable doing that. But I realize that's a step too far for most people. But I do recommend having these little bags of treats and a bottle of water to give out to homeless people rather than money.
Great idea. Great idea. And you in your books, you've incorporated travel, like Road Home. She was in a car with someone getting a ride. What triggered you to put that travel mode in there?
Well, because I think life is a journey, whether we realize it or not. And all of my books have ended up being travel books because as we walk through life, whether we actually physically move or not, our lives are moving. And if we don't realize that we're on a journey, physically, spiritually, emotionally, then we've missed a large bit of what life is about. And so really it's more of a metaphor than more than anything. Because we should be growing and changing, and our lives should be moving in some direction or other. And hopefully you are traveling physically, because that makes life beautiful because you meet new people, right?
Mhm.
But life itself is this beautiful journey, and you just don't know where it's going to take you.
Yes, yes. Life can change. Something can happen or something takes a turn that can just change your life into a different direction or, different things around you. It's one day to the next.
Yeah, and every day is an opportunity to take a different direction. Whether even if you're in your same town, do you ever think about the fact that you go the same way to the grocery store every time you go to the grocery store? Do you ever think about that? How
No,
about you?
not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, how about you go a different way tomorrow to the grocery store? You know, every time you do something, you have a choice to make things a little different. And maybe that's better. Have you ever thought about that? You know?
No, what a fun idea. But we can get so caught up in our habits, our routine, when we could do something a little different. Oh my gosh, there's a new shop or there's a park that I didn't know that was there. I'm going a different way. What a
Yep.
fun idea, Leigh. Wow.
And this is the beauty of life, is that if you look at it as a journey, you just don't know what you're going to discover. And and this is what I love about travel itself, is every time I go anywhere, I go without a plan and I go without a map. And a lot of people are like, but that's really scary. And I'm like, no, it's really fun because I get totally lost. And then I find these amazing things. And they're like, and people just give me this look like you're just out there in left field somewhere, right? But no, that's life. Life
An
shouldn't be
adventure.
planned. Life
Yes.
shouldn't be planned.
Wow. Wow. I've always had the mindset and attitude, this hand, yes, is what I want, what path I want, this and that. But this hand is totally open to a new direction or a new something. And, because things can come into our lives that we had not even ever considered or thought of. So it is great to keep that door open, isn't it?
Yeah, and in Road Home, if you really look at it, she was so closed to so many things, and this is where she ran into so many problems, because all she looked at is the very, very narrow view of what first her parents told her and then what her very abusive husband told her, and she wasn't willing to look at anything beyond that. And so then she ended up just spiraling and then literally put herself out on the streets because she knew there had to be something better, but she didn't know what it was. And so it's so she had a really hard time figuring out how to find something better, and then just thought, well, the worst is the best I can have. And then when somebody tried to give her something better, she always said no. every time because she just wasn't willing to accept it. And you can see this play out slowly throughout the book where she just kept saying no to every good thing somebody's given her.
Yes.
And
yes.
we often do that. And not just if you're experiencing homelessness. I've seen people do this literally, like my next door neighbors. I mean, lots of people do this where they're just so stuck in where they are. They will not accept something different.
Mhm. Yeah. And that can easily happen, and you just get stuck in what you are or what you're looking ahead for. You can kind of close the door and what you could be open to and what you could bring into your life. So really expanding and feeling that adventure and, you know, kind of getting on the road to life.
Yep.
This life's highway.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Our little physical vehicle, and we're going down this life's highway. And, you know, when you think about it like that, it can be kind of exciting.
Well, because again, you just don't know what you're going to end up with. And I'm not saying you don't need goals, because goals are good. You know, you have to have some idea where you're going, or you're not going to end up anywhere, right? So a really great example of this is I'm adopted, and I've always wanted to find my birth parents. That's been a goal of mine since I probably was 5, right? And but I never thought about what that would entail and who else that would involve, right? Because I was just like, okay, I want to find my birth father and my birth mother, right? Well, then I find my birth father, and hey, I have a sister. Ooh, cool, right? So you can have goals, but if you open yourself up to what else that can mean, right? Because, well, do I want a connection with my sister? Well, of course I do, right? But I could have just been really narrow and focused and say, oh no, my goal was just my father, right? No, sorry, you're out, because that all I wanted was, right? But you have to be open to everything that comes along with whatever your goal is. And I'm just saying, but see, you get all kinds of other things just because you have this goal. You finally get the goal, you might get something else too. You have to be open and willing to accept whatever comes your way as you're working towards your goal.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. Being open and just, you know, yes to what may manifest or what may come, and, you know, what opportunities, people we may meet. It's really fascinating. And now, Leigh, you are continuing to be an advocate for the homeless, and you're doing a lot. And actually, a bit of the proceeds from your book goes towards that.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
does that work like? Yes.
I give a portion of the proceeds of all my books to charity. The charity this year is Habitat for Humanity. It's a different charity every year, but that's the one this year. Because I feel it's important to use my platform for good. And the bigger my platform gets, the more I feel I can do. But I feel ultimately that's what's most important to me, is to continue working and letting people know that this is important. And right now, with the economy the way it is post-COVID, there are so many people that are sinking into homeless and poverty that never thought they would. There are so many people that used to be middle class that are now lower class and sinking fast. And rents are out of control, and the cost of living is just atrocious. So yeah, I just feel it's more important than ever that we all band together. And if that's not your charity of choice, that's fine. But we all need to work together to solve this problem, because this problem can only be solved by all of us working together.
And compassion for others, you know, can mean so much. It really can. And helping and understanding what others might be going through that you may not be going through. and homelessness is something that really is going on. And, so how would you recommend someone that, wants to help a bit with that? What can I do? What can an average person do to help with that?
Well, one of my big things is there almost everywhere in the country, there are shelters and soup kitchens that are always looking for volunteers. There are also various churches and groups that do what's called street feeds, where they go out into communities and provide food and compassion to people that are not willing to come into a shelter or a soup kitchen. And statistically, a lot of these people will not come in unless someone first goes out and talks to them. There's a lot of reasons for that, but you really need to go out and meet them where they're at. And it takes an average of 7 to 14 visits where they're at before they are willing to come in. And again, there's a lot of reasons for this. But around the country, there are all kinds of groups that do all of these things. And so you can connect with a group, and they're fairly easy to find. There are places like Facebook groups that you can find that talk about this in your local community. Again, various churches around the country sponsor things like this. You can talk to your local city leaders. They often know where these groups are in town. And in some places, some of the laws need to change, because there are places in this country where it is illegal to pass out a sandwich to a homeless person.
Yeah, that needs to change. Myself, I've had the great opportunity of volunteering at a shelter in Tacoma, where I'm at, Tacoma, Washington, and just helping with passing out food and greeting people. And it was, I did that for several months, and it was something I'll never forget.
And the need is, like I say, the need is greater now more than it has been in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
There are so many people right now. Probably everyone has a neighbor that's struggling right now.
Yeah. And just the awareness of that. And even, possibly we can make donations to a food shelter. I mean, there's just so many ways that, we can contribute and make a bit of a difference. And that's a really beautiful thing. That's really wonderful, all the work you're doing, Leigh. Do you see yourself writing another novel?
My next novel is coming out November 18th. It's the start of a new series called Path to Family. The first book, called Lost Father, is about a birth father who gets his girlfriend pregnant and then just leaves and then tries to build a whole nother life, and then gets contacted by his child 50 something years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this series is going to show the whole story from 4 different perspectives. So each book in this series is going to be the same story, but from somebody else's viewpoint. So the first book, again, is from the birth father. Second book is going to be from the birth mother. The third book will be from the perspective of the people who adopted the child. And then the fourth book will be from the child's perspective.
Wow.
So you will see, and I'm going to try not to overlap too much, but of course there will be some overlap because it's the same story 4 different
Great
ways.
idea. Right? That's going to be a fascinating read. My goodness, everyone's, different perspective and oh my gosh, what an idea, Leigh.
Because, well, I haven't found my birth mother yet, but I've found my birth father, and I actually started writing this book before I found him. But just the whole idea of, you just don't know what happens behind closed doors, and there's so many different lives involved in this whole situation when you
Mhm.
have adoption. It's not like when you give birth to a child. It's a very different situation. And
Yes.
as I often try to explain to people, as much as I love my son is awesome. He's amazing. He's mine, right? But my parents who adopted me, they chose me. I was special. I was picked, right? It's a
Yeah.
whole different relationship than what I have with my own child, right? It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's a totally
Imagine,
different
yes.
level of parenting.
Yes, yes, you're right. You were picked. Oh my gosh, this is so fun, fascinating. We have about 2 minutes left, Leigh. What last message do you want to leave with everyone?
Well, if anyone wants to find out more about my books, the best way is to go to my website, which is leiglincolnauthor.com. That's Leigh, lincolnauthor.com. You can purchase the books, print books on there, and they're autographed. If you do, there's also the links to purchase the ebooks on there. The audiobooks links are on there as well. All my social media is on there. Everything is on there. It's a one-stop shop, super easy. You can find everything right from my website.
Oh, thank you. Your books are so unique, Leigh. And this new series you're creating, oh my gosh. That's going to be a really fascinating read. I love it. Oh, thank you so much for all you've done and all your contributing and all your kindness and caring for people, not just homeless people, but people, helping them, helping us to see, through a different lens and all of that. I'm really grateful, Leigh. And thank you for having you on the show. I'm really grateful.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone have a great day today. Love, hugs, and blessings. Leigh, love, hugs, and blessings.